Hello and welcome to our Serious Tip webinar. Today's topic is see how Wagner Signs uses dashboards to save 8 hours a day. In today's session we have Todd Wagner joining us from Wagner Signs located in Indianapolis, and the focus is he'll be showing us some dashboards that he's created and uses every day to help automate workflow within his business. He'll spend about 15 to 20 minutes talking and giving a demo, and then we will go ahead and open up the phone lines for questions and answers. So please be thinking of your questions during the session. Todd, I'll go ahead and turn over the reins to you if you want to start by saying a little bit about the role that control plays in your business every day.
Control for us actually functions as an employee itself. When you've gone from 22 employees to shrink down to 8 and still accomplish many of the things that you need to do, we really search for tools that would allow us to do that. And Control has been that for us. Dean was our salesperson. He was very patient with us. I, being a mechanical engineer, having an engineer's mind, I had to see and understand everything. So it did actually take us a little bit to actually buy onto the system and get things up and going. But I can say that it has been a lifesaver the moment we took Control and actually used all the aspects of Control. We've actually been paperless for 13 months now. Some of the highlights saved us about $200 a month in paper and ink. The way we used to operate, as a lot of sign businesses have, we'd have these little clear sheets, and all our information would be in that. And that clear sheet would go from department to the department, from the sales point of view. Actually, let me show you. Basically, we would have paperwork that would shuffle between each one of these departments. Sales, estimating, we would shovel our paperwork over to my designer who would put it together. We would staple and put 5 different sheets together, stapled, and it would go to production. It would sit in their box outside their room. They would produce it. It would go to the install, and so on and so on. I think all of you know the difficulty to communicate throughout the process accurately and know what's going on. But what we have actually done with Control is adapt the dashboard both, as you see here, in the estimate form of our process, and then once it is converted over to a job, we communicate that from basically a point of production forward. What we've done is added different throughout the dashboard to help us communicate. Let me start basically with the estimate perspective. This Fox Acres here is actually a job that I'm in estimation today. It's a job that the customers communicated to me what they're looking for. We basically, as you can see, have different stations. So throughout the sales process, it goes through design, it goes through estimating, and then we will do what is called a spec sheet. And that spec sheet looks something like this. And this is how we've gone paperless, is that each one of the stations throughout our company basically has 2 monitors. So they see the spec sheet in one, and then they see Control in the other. And let me just stick with the sales process first. So as we go through the different types of elements, as you see, these are different people's names. So we have 2 designers, so thus I have 2 people that can do spec sheets. So I'm going to walk this apartment complex estimate through the process. So as you can see, I'm working on the estimate right now. Once that estimate is done, I'm going to send it over to my designer to do a spec sheet. So I'll basically click it here, and then I want to set some parameters for my designer to do that spec sheet. So we've just put a little UDF line in there, or a user-defined line, and then I will let her know that I basically want to get this done by Thursday at the end of the day. So right now I've transferred ownership of this job. I've got the estimate done. I've transferred ownership to my processing person, and I've asked her to get that done by Thursday. And that's just kind of how things flow within the sales department end of things. She will basically then turn it over to a job. And once it becomes a job, this is that lightbound job. Once it becomes a job, I'm going to show how we communicate through the department. So Shannon will complete the spec sheet, which she has done right here. We put the job number on, all the specifications, quantity, everything. And a lot of these elements also are in control. They can be in control. We just choose to show our production people a picture and as much information. We do put the file names in where things need to go for reference and stuff like that. This is just our process. So basically, Shannon has completed the lightbound spec sheet. She will then turn it over to production. So basically, where we would take that clear sheet and we would make all those copies and everything that's going on, right now, she doesn't have to leave her office. I can actually be a salesperson working from home, and I will basically turn this job over to production, and I will place it production in queue. So every day, and we also take the sales station and do the same thing. So basically every day throughout the day, my production manager will go and he will sort and he will look at all the jobs that have now come to him, production in queue. You can see the light down here. The really cool thing too is throughout the process, my production manager can see that these are jobs that are spec sheet being completed. So he can actually see the jobs that are coming his way beforehand, which has just been a real success for us, for my production manager to actually look, maybe order materials, do a few things ahead of time. Back to the lightbound job. Once my production manager would look to see this is a job that I have on hand, he will then basically turn that job over to say that it's either in process. He may turn it over. He may just say he's reviewing the request. We may have something that he wants to order something for that. So we actually know exactly where the job is throughout the process. But in this job right here, my production manager has turned it over to the router department. And basically he tells us from the sales station, production has it. It's either in schedule or in progress. So in this case, everything right here in the sales stuff, it's scheduled. Basically, production has ownership in it. Then right now, as the router department routes it, he routes it, and then he may turn it over to the paint department to paint it. He may turn it over to be assembled. So as it goes through the steps, that's what this station has done. But what we've actually done is now we've actually created ownership of this. So he, in this column, let me back up a little bit. Basically, you just need to know that we change from department to department in this station. These are UDFs that we have put together. This is the production line. This is where my production manager assigns ownership throughout his production department, and he tells them when he wants it done. Basically, that's how things flow. It will be scheduled in production. When they're done with it, my install manager will then put a date on when he's going to have it done. One thing that we're working with Control, or one of our requests, are basically when we look at Control, we can't decide or we don't know at a glance that it's a firm date with our customer. You can do it in a process order. So what we have actually done is we've just created a firm date for ourselves. In other words, we basically go to this line and we edit, and we basically created our little line that now we know that that is a firm date. That's what we've communicated with the customer, that we will have it done by the end of that day. So we just created ourselves a little UDF that would allow that at a glance we can know that this is a firm date. Now, we use the dashboard as a production schedule, but the benefits to this is that the sorting at the top, my production can actually click and know that this is what our plan is for the day. So Augie, my employee in the paint area, knows that these are the fab things that he's doing today. This is what was required of him for the day. And then my install manager, who has a death in the family, that's why you don't see a lot of stuff scheduled right now, these are the things that he has scheduled, and he can tell us that, and we can also know from a scheduling that it's either in queue, it's in process, or a lot of those elements are there. So there's just a lot of things that we use Control. One of the things that I really like for me as a manager is the sorting at the top. So I can really, in a glance, look to know here are my big jobs and what's going on. We've also just done a little coding that where you see PWI, that's product with install. CPI is customer pickup. So I, in one little sort, can click this, and I know that these are the jobs, the CPU, our customer pickup. These are the jobs that we know that the customer's picking up. DC or DG, it's just a term, delivery courier, delivery ground. These are install-only jobs, and these are jobs that has production work, and it also has install. Some benefits for this for us is that we were able to use Control to tailor this dashboard for this to be a production schedule. It is a great communication tool. We also use it for our invoicing. We have a specific process that when it's all done, production tells us that it's in queue. So it basically says that this invoice is in queue to be looked at. I, as the leadership of the company, I look at every invoice to make sure that the pricing is correct before it gets to the customer. So I will review it, and then as a tool that we use to let the salesperson know that the job is complete, I then turn it over to my salesperson for them to have final approval. When they are done with it, it then gets converted over to right here that the invoice is in queue. Every morning, my process manager is responsible for printing all the invoices out. So every morning when she comes in from 8 to 8:30, she looks at the jobs that are marked invoice to be mailed. So in 10 minutes, she prints out the 8 jobs that we average do. She puts them in the mail, and it goes. We, at one time, were spending about an hour and a half merging all the paperwork together, putting it in my little clear box outside my office. I would verify it, that everything was correct. We put it in the salesperson. So we basically took an hour and a half of the day out to do something productive that we now do in about 15 minutes, just from when the job is done to approve it, to get an invoice, and go from there. And even throughout, we have little things that, you know, that maybe the job is done, but we're waiting for that PO, or we're waiting that we just have a question. So we can kind of put it on hold. We also can say that it's COD. You know, there's just a number of things that instead of mailing it for the 45 cents, you know, we can say, hey, go ahead and email it to the customer. So, you know, in all, it was simple for us to use Control to create a dashboard that fit our needs, that really walked us through each and every one of the processes that we were spending so much time, and we would get the information later. I can't tell you how many times I would get up and go tell my production manager, okay, we've got a rush job. You need to order material. We have to have it done by Friday. With Control, everyone knows what's going on throughout the process, throughout the stage, and that's just been just a huge success for us. I can say that Control has allowed us to actually function as a 9 or 10 employee business when we're just 8, because I really truly believe that Control is just like an employee, except we get all the information accurately, and it's just a great tool. I think that's about it. If you want to click on for discussions, we can kind of go from there.
Thanks, Todd. I'll go ahead and unmute everyone if others would like to start asking questions.
Yeah, I'd love to. My name's Michael Harbin.
Hello, Michael.
Hey, Todd. So I have a question for you. We have a very similar type business to yours. And my question is, on the details of every job, all of your people that are at their various workstations, whether they're painting, routing, or whatever they're doing, do they not, or what do you do to show them, you know, the details of what they're doing? Obviously, they can go to control, they can look at the drawings or whatever, but at some point, they need to sit there and study a drawing and make sure they understand it so that they can actually produce it. So if you've gone paperless, how are they reviewing this? Because they can't take the screen with them to their workstation.
Okay, very good question. It is simple. I'm going to sort through the products here, okay? And I can tell you that Augie for MI, let me pick something decent. Here's the sign that we're doing right now, this Eagle crossing. So my Augie's going to look at work order number 31970. So he's going to come hold on. I don't know. Things are a little, oh, okay, sorry. We changed a new month. What we do is every screen has this year. So these are all my jobs from 2011. And then this, since we just closed out the month, January 1st, this right here are my jobs in January. So let me just bring this over here and shut this off. So Augie's job that he was going to look at was 31970. So I'm going to go to job number 31970, and this is what they have in the back as well. 31. All right. Well, basically to answer your question, they will go to whatever work order it is, and we have all the specifications right here. This is what my process manager girl does. So this is the layout. These are the color builds. This is the job. Here's how many we have, and these are the file names. So someone has the opportunity to either look at it on the screen, or like my install manager will just print out this spec sheet, and he'll take that with him with the install sheet from Control as well. And that's what he will do with the job if he needs to do that. But I can tell you 95% of the jobs in my graphic department, that is 40% of what we do, they work off of this screen for this, and then they actually have 2 monitors at each station, and then they work off of Control on the other one. Does that answer your question?
Well, yeah, I guess it does to a point. I mean, we do some things, I'm sure you do some things, where there's enough details that they need to have this piece. So at that point, I'm assuming your production manager is printing off a piece so that they can reference back to it and go, all right, that's how that fits together. I get it. So you're not going totally paperless. You are printing off some of these production sheets, I assume, so that they can understand details.
Actually, there is no reason for your production manager to print a sheet. We're firm believers in handing over ownership. So, yes, my fabrication guy, yeah, he's painting, he's assembling, but within 15 feet, he has a monitor that he can look at it. If he wants to print it out, he can. But what he also does is he walks into my production manager's office and says, hey, I've got a 6 mil piece of die bond. I'd like to use that as scrap. They'll call and look at the job, and they'll make that decision there. Yes, we do print out a few sheets, but I can tell you we do an average of 8 jobs a day, and where we had literally 15 sheets going with 3 different departments, we might print 1 out of 10 jobs, and we might just print that spec sheet out, and that's really about it. Once your employees get accustomed to looking and answering their questions, it's only paint area or assembly in a fab room that they would need a printout. But, you know, I mean, we actually had probably 15 copies in each job, maybe 20, and we did an average of 8 jobs a day. So 8 times 10, you could have quite a few sheets of paper in a day, and that's really what Control has helped us with.
So how are you handling and working with this when you've got a job complete now and it's there's a lot of different pieces in that? Are they running back and forth to the monitor to reference to load the vehicle to go, or they have something that's allowing them to go, okay, I've got this, 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 and this, we're all good?
Typically on a job, the elements for the project are going to be in there. This was an install that we did. We had to go up to Kokomo or wherever this was at. So, yes. Did my install manager print out this sheet? Absolutely. You know. But, yeah, he needed his brush standoff. But when we packed the job, when my production area packed the job, he put the standoffs on there. Some of the jobs he might need an installation. So, yeah, when you're out, do I have that iPad that he can go out? No. But you know what? I'm thinking about it. So he's got a tool, because the really cool thing about him being mobile with this is when he's done with the install, he can put his hours down there. So I would say within the next 12 to 24 months, is my install guy going to have one of those little iPad things? Probably. I'm not there yet, but look for it in the next year or two.
Gotcha. Okay.
And once you make the adjustment, yes. Was there a little bit of apprehension? Yes. I think when there's change, but it literally took us just 5 days because my install manager wasn't spending an hour and a half merging all this paperwork and putting it in my box. He was probably spending an hour a day on a spreadsheet trying to do the production schedule. And then the crazy thing was, he had 3 different salespeople feeding him stuff with dates. So, you know, that's just the thing, is that we can also see what he's got going on. We as a sales force can see these are the jobs in queue for my install manager. So I can quickly look at this, and if I've got a rush job, I can see where it's going to fit his schedule. And just the quickness and communication and the savings of everything, you know, I can say we probably wouldn't be in business if we hadn't had this a year ago and got to where we are right now. Because as you well know, when things get crazy, when we're in stress, that's when our human nature to go back to old ways of doing things. And I can tell you that we sit down as a team, as a department team, and look at the schedule as a whole with all the departments just to say, how does the week look? Where do we have opportunities? And we use that as well. My production manager does. So don't be afraid of it. It's just really worked well for us.
So how often are your people going back and forth to their stations, either updating information or, you know, obviously if they go back and forth to check details, you know, they're spending time doing that. That's probably hard to measure. I don't know.
Just from the sales perspective, this morning I converted, okay, and here's the other really cool thing. Here is all the things that we did today, okay? Okay, today is February 1st, so these are all the jobs that came to the schedule. So my production manager, when he comes back from lunch, if he had his first half of the day planned, that's great. But these jobs right here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, these are all the jobs that I just processed today. So there is no way that we would get all this stuff into my production manager's box. So what a benefit for him at 1 or 2 times during the day to know that this is now just what came to his agenda. This is the new stuff coming in. Up front, we don't really even need to talk. One of my salespersons, which is my sister who's been here 20 years, she never leaves her desk. She does everything off of control. She'll either send an email with a task to do, but we basically communicate and function as a sales department right here, from the design to the spec sheet, to the customer approval, to everything. So I used to put in my processing girl probably 10 clear sheets with all my stuff in it. We don't do that anymore. Actually, we're more just intercoming to each other with little questions, because here's the really cool thing with this. Here's the parameters that I set for my processing right here. Keep the questions coming.
Okay. So Todd, next question is, when you first got the Cyrious software and you got it going, how long was it for you to set it up and integrate it and actually get to where you were comfortable every day using the thing? How much people time do you suppose that took?
I actually bought it in March because I was just not sure. And then we got so busy trying to make a living that we really didn't get serious about it till October. My production manager, put in the data, got it kind of set up, but did we really hone in? And finally, once we made a commitment, it was about, I want to say, a 6-week time frame to where we got comfortable with what's going on, and then we basically, in the middle of November, made a commitment that we were going to devote the energy and time. And basically, it was my processing girl, Shannon. She probably devoted about an hour and a half a day for about a month and a half, and I kind of did the same thing. But most of the stuff that we did was developing and figuring out how we were going to communicate and what our rules were. So we basically set our rules for our sales. We set our rules for this. And, just to show you, if you look at your screen, this is kind of what we set up. We basically set the rules from the start to the finish. In other words, from our lead generation, how would it go into the system, to what our salespeople would do, and then our estimation. So we basically use control to follow all the way through, from converting an estimate over to an order to what we needed to do. So what you see in the dashboard was all our stuff here. And then these are all the different functions or operations within our facility and what we do. And then you see our invoice approval, our billing, and then we actually do a client follow-up in our step, which is just what we've added for this year. So, once we understood how it functioned, once we said January 1st was it, it literally took us just 5 days, and we were up and going, and every day it was like, oh my gosh, I got an extra 2 hours today because of that. So it is painful. I am an engineer. I did need to see, feel, and touch it to make sure that I was confident with it. But, my production team and everyone else, they didn't have a problem with it. We told them the 3 rules that we follow, and we just kind of jammed. They really like not having to sort through paperwork. It was something that I've been searching for 20 years.
So when your drawings that you showed there, when you were in production and you showed a layout of a sign and the design and all the specs and that, I'm
Yes.
assuming you're utilizing somebody's graphic software for that. And you're importing a PDF or something?
Yeah, our spec sheet. Yeah, and that's what I keep. That's what I've got. Excuse me. It's this right here. Yeah, we just have this in like an N drive, and these are all our spec sheets that we go through. So what my challenge to Control in Cyrious is add me a line in here where I can click and have my spec sheet on my dashboard. But it hasn't really been that big of a deal for us. But yes, we do just save our spec sheets on like an N drive, or we call it our spec sheet drive, and everything is there. As you can see right here, I've got last year's stuff in by the month, and we've got January stuff here. We average about 8 jobs a day. Last month we processed 183 work orders, and we could never have done that with just 3 people, myself, my other salesperson, which is a designer, and my processing person. So that averaged out almost 8 or 9 jobs a day in a 21-day working month. And there's no way that 3 people could be able to do that without having this system.